All right, welcome in to another episode of Hockey Royalty Live, the official podcast of hockeyroyalty.com. Tonight we got episode 182. This isn't where I parked my car. We're going to be talking about the last couple games here for the Los Angeles Kings. We're doing a little coast to coast where we talk about the league and then talk about the Kings going forward. But you know what to do. Get in the chat, like and subscribe. Let's go. All right. That song was brought to you by Ezera, the new song Blind, out now anywhere you listen to music. So go give that a little touch on your Spotify or wherever. But as you can tell, if you're watching with us live, we're down one. So just like the LA Kings in the second period, Russell's nowhere to be found tonight. So he's out enjoying himself. So you're just stuck with the man, the myth, the legend, Joe, and your host, Randon. Joe, how are you doing, my man?
I'm all right. So the Paterino household has had its bouts of 'tis the season for like colds and things like that, and I'm trying to do my best to dodge it. I felt I was coming down with something last night, so I had no shot at making the game, so I ended up shutting it down well before the game started. I'll be honest, Randy, I feel pretty refreshed this morning. I felt pretty refreshed this morning, so I feel pretty good right now. I'm ready to go. Maybe I'm going to be the one in the house that dodged it.
Drugs,
we'll see. How you doing?
Good, man. Busy day at the job. So the Max feed was messing up last night, so I had to kind of watch the condensed version of the game a little bit today with just the goals, but overall, not doing too bad. I'm excited to see the Niners win a game, even though it was in bad fashion this last weekend. So overall, pretty good. Getting kind of, my brothers and I do Thanksgiving every year, all together, and we're all kind of trying to pitch in to see which person's bringing what. So we're all kind of trying to narrow that down. But other than that, pretty good, man. Can't complain.
Yeah, I think probably the only thing we can complain about is after a pretty good stretch for the Kings, they dropped 2 straight recently. So, I guess that's a little something we can complain about, which we'll probably do a little bit of in the beginning part of the show.
And that's where we start with a little bit of complaining. So Gwen, one of our lovely listeners, thank you, Gwen, for always listening, was like, hey, why is this episode called, that's not where I parked my car, and it's from a movie and everything like that. So it's about, this guy puts himself in a bad situation, and then when it goes bad or turns bad, he's like, oh, this isn't where I parked my car. Like he miraculously ended up there. And this last week, it seemed like some of the glaring issues were from things that the Kings put themselves in, whether it be putting 2 statuesque players out there on defense all the time, whether it's putting guys that constantly, take penalties and wonder why we're always on the penalty kill, whether it's putting a fourth line player in his prime on the first line and seeing why that line doesn't work. So I think some of the deficiencies in this last week have been self-inflicted wounds. And so for the Kings, this isn't where they parked their car, but they're wondering why they're there. So Joe, especially in the last games, got shellacked by a really good team. And that's kind of how you gauge where this team is going to play in the playoffs. But what have you seen from the Kings, who were playing really good hockey less than a week ago, to the last couple of nights?
Yeah, well, I don't think they played a bad game in Calgary, though, to be clear. So they lose the game in Calgary. They lose 3-1. The Flames get an empty netter. And I thought the Kings were not great early, but really once Calgary went up 2-0, maybe a little bit before that, I thought the Kings were quite good. I thought they had a really good second half of that game. They couldn't find the back of the net. They couldn't solve Dustin Wolf, who I thought he was really, really good that game. So I
Yeah,
don't
he
think
was.
it was all doom and gloom necessarily for the Calgary game, just because I thought they actually did play well for the better part of it. And man, I got to say it could be the best game I've seen Brant Clark play in the NHL. He was all over the ice. I believe he led the team in ice time. I had him leading the team in shot contributions. He had 5 shot assists, which led the team. I had him with 3 slot passes too, which from a defenseman is something you don't see that very often. I thought it was excellent against Calgary.
The train picked up an extra shift or two that night. We're you've got to get everybody where they need to go the holiday season. So the Clark train was definitely working overtime. I like, so the goals and the assists have been great. And obviously he's still on pace to beat our projection, but a lot of people's head scratching over the year or what he could be for the team this year. Is he going to be a dependable first line defenseman, or is he going to be a dependable defenseman, period? Like, we all know he can do this offensive stuff, but can he be dependable? And you don't get 25 minutes of ice time if the coach can't depend on you. And I think this is like you said, the best game that you thought he played overall in the game. And I think it just shows his evolution of what he can do as a defenseman. And he's only going to tick more boxes off in his game as the season goes along. I know obviously the stats are there with the slot passes. He didn't put up 3 assists like he has in other games. But outside of the stats, like, what did you see in his skating or his prep or where he was playing in position? Like, what made you think that this was his best game playing?
Well, just his timing, his overall willingness to jump up into the play. I don't think even though he was doing that, I don't know that he was like caught out of position ever. I think his defensive play has been largely, I think it's been fine. Like there's even if he is somebody that's going to be a little bit more risky at times, like that Calgary game especially, he was a rover in that Calgary game, but I think I don't think it hurt the team in any way. I mean, like we've seen some concerns about that from some people, but I think you have to just kind of embrace it. And he really seemed like he seemed comfortable, like he seemed confident. He seemed like he wasn't second guessing anything. He was making the right reads. Really good with the puck, but also really good without the puck. I think his angles, when the way he was playing defense was, when he had pressure coming in on him was better. Like, I just think he's evolving and it's going to take time. Like, he's a 20-year-old defenseman. This is his first full season. So this is going to be a process, the defensive part of the game, especially. And I think, I look at, there's always conversation, not always, but lately there's been conversation in Western New York here about Owen Power. Right, this is the first overall pick not very long ago. Signs a big contract. There's some growing pains here, right? I mean, this is not a player that's like lighting the world on fire in Buffalo for a number 1 overall pick. But with these young defensemen, like I think, for me, like, all I'm looking for in the first couple of years of a defenseman, especially when they're starting so young, is like, am I seeing signs like, okay, there's definitely something here. Like, you expect it to take some time for them to get used to the speed, to get used to the pace of the play, the pace of, certain decisions, when you have to make certain decisions. If you're in the D zone, do I have to go behind the net? Am I the guy staying in front? There's so much that goes into it, and the pace of all those decisions is like lightning. So I think Clark is only going to continue to get better with those things. But what I'm looking for is that foundation of what makes him a great prospect there. And clearly that is. No one expected Brant Clark to come in and be a Norris caliber defensive defenseman when he came in, but is he showing signs that he is here and he can be the Clark that he's brought in to be that offensive threat? And then as he's here and as he's settling into that game, then you kind of work on, in this early part of his career, rounding out his game. And I think a lot of that's just going to come with reps. It's going to come with time. As he gets more comfortable, as he gets used to, again, seeing getting used to the pace of the game and a lot of the other players he's going to see. So I just think it's, there's going to be a stretch here where he probably struggles. right? There's going to be a stretch of games where it doesn't go so well.
Oh, the Clark train don't get rusty, boy. Clark train don't get rusty.
So we just have to know that, like, because the first couple of games of the season were a little like, dipping his toes into the water, I feel like, but he's jumping in head first now. He's got a whole bunch of confidence. There's going to be some times where there's some hiccups and some growing pains, but you're looking for signs in the early part of a young defenseman's career of, is he showing why he should be here? Is he showing you signs of what made him get to this point? And he very clearly is. And he's a dynamic type of defenseman that the Kings have not had in a long, long time. So hopefully the progression continues. But as we've said on this show for a long time now, the growth of these young players and these prospects is not linear. This stuff, I've seen it locally with Rasmus Dahlin. He came hot out of the gate. Really had a couple of years where he was in some growing pains. He was struggling, and now he's one of the best defensemen in the league. So, I think it just takes time, especially with young defensemen, perhaps more so even than forwards.
That's very well said. And I think my confidence has never wavered on his talent, but I think a lot of fans are coming around to the possibility that he can be a number one defenseman for this team in the future, and throughout the rest of Drew Doughty's career, it can maybe take those reins. That the flashes aren't just once in a while. Like, he's showing you stuff every single game now. Whether it's a highlight reel pass or assist, solid defensive play, 25 minutes of trust ice time. Like, he's kind of just showing you a little something here, and like, he's had some bad moments. Sure, everybody on the team's had bad moments this season. But I think he's like, you could pick something out of every single game where I feel like he's done something productive for his progression.
Yeah, and you look at that Calgary game, most of his time, he played almost 8.5 minutes, almost 9 minutes against Connor Zary, Nazem Kadri, and Yegor Sharangovich. And by the way, Connor Zary, the kid looks like a player. He was really fun to watch. Yeah. Really fun to watch. But in that nearly 9 minutes of ice time that Clark was against them, 15-10 in attempts in favor of Clark when they were on the ice, and Clark had there's a over 63% expected goal share, 9-5 in scoring chances. So, like, you're going against Calgary's top threats offensively, and he was comfortable, right? He was really good shutting them down, and the Kings held the better of it when he was on the ice. So just to kind of, I guess, unless you got anything more in Calgary, just to tie a bow a little bit, I don't think the Calgary game was that bad. I thought the Kings had a really good push at the end. I think they were, I don't want to say hard luck, because you start slow and that's what happens in the NHL. And I don't think they had a good start. And eventually Calgary was able to take advantage of that. But I thought the Kings did play a decent game against Calgary.
Yeah, I would agree with you. They played a decent game, and it's just usually on these pods and how it goes with Kings fandom is your last game, right? I thought they played a very solid game in Vancouver. They obviously won the game in Columbus, but you're looking at the teams, like, nobody expects the Flames to be in the Western Conference Finals or anything like that. And if the Kings want to win a playoff round or a Stanley Cup, the two teams that are going to be in their way that they lost. They played competitively to Vancouver. They did not play competitively to Colorado. So, like, you should have won the game in Columbus. So great for them to win that game. They got 2 points. But I think, you play well, and you didn't end up picking any points up, but the caliber games that we want to see the progression for us as a franchise didn't go our way this week. And so I think that's why kind of a lot of fans are upset, because recency bias. I mean, that was an awful game.
Yeah. I mean, and we talk about this a lot. Like, there was no need to get too high after the back-to-back wins against Minnesota and Nashville. Really good wins.
Yeah. 2
road games against two. I know Nashville's off to a tough start, but 2 solid teams overall. And then they go and they drop 3 out of 4. But, like, that's the season. Like, this is the way it's going to go over the course of 82 games. I mean, I don't think the Kings are a team that are, they're not a team that is probably good enough to rattle off a 10-1 stretch or win 10 straight or whatever. And they're not bad enough to where they're going to go on a stretch like that on the other on the other side of the coin. So they're going to have like win 2, drop 3, this type of season. I kind of think that that's how we could see this season go.
Which is going to be frustrating for fans.
It's not.
So
yeah, it's not always easy.
Speaking of not always easy, we're talking about a player struggling and progression isn't always linear. The other prospect, Jordan Spence, having a rough go at it, especially last night.
Yep.
Our projection of him and what he could be with this new found ice time this season has not been met. But what are you seeing from his game that's maybe different from what you thought it was going to be from last year? And where do you think he is struggling with his game this year?
Boy, this is a great question. And I'm not even going to pretend to say that I know the answer or even have a great idea of an answer, to be honest with you. I don't know. I mean, I could sit here and probably lazily say it just doesn't look like he's playing with the same kind of confidence, but I don't like that. I kind of think that's a bit of a cop-out type of answer. I mean, I'm sure he knows that he's struggling right now. You mentioned the game against Colorado. It wasn't good. I mean, he had 15 minutes of ice time at 5-on-5, got out attempted 19-4, was on the ice for 2 goals against. Scoring chances were 10-0. This is per natural stat trick. When Spence was on the ice. And, I see Gwen puts in not giving up on Spenny and me neither. And like I was just talking about with Clark and just talking about referencing Owen Power and Rasmus Dahlin. Well, young defensemen, there's going to be rough patches. And right now, Jordan Spence is going through it. Now, I don't know if it's a matter of, he was playing third pair minutes last year and just maybe that just suits him much better. And maybe he isn't ready for bigger minutes or a bigger role, which, hasn't always been the case. I know he's played with Mike Anderson a bit. I think yesterday he was paired with Caleb Jones a lot of it. So like, it's not as if he's consistently seeing top minutes against top end players or anything, but it's definitely been a big time struggle for Jordan Spence right now. And it's tough to see because we were all extremely high on him coming into the season. I thought he was great last year. In the regular season, I thought he was really good in playoffs. It seemed like this was a player that was, his game was kind of just really rounding out. But this is a good example of why, when you talk in preseason about, well, this guy's going to take the next step and this guy's going to take a next step. It's just not always a guarantee. I still think Spence is a good talent. I still think he's a good player. I don't know what it is right now where, what's going on with his game to where he's struggling right now, but he's very much struggling.
Players often you get called with what's called the yips, where it's like nothing seems to be going right. I feel like that's kind of how Spence's season has been going. And when you're quarterbacking the power play and you're playing on the back end, a lot of it's that visual, seeing the ice well and seeing where the plays are developing and making those passes and where do I take these angles? And it just seems like he's second guessing a lot of it. Like he's a tick short on a lot of these plays. And when you see a hitter in baseball, like constantly missing the same pitch over and over and over again, it's like, why can't you make an adjustment? And sometimes players don't know how to make an adjustment, or it's such an instinct game. And when you feel like your instincts are a tick slow, like how do you reason that with yourself? How do you get back on the ice? Do you just trust your ability, even though your ability's gotten you into this mess? It's kind of a cycle. It's a weird cycle with the psyche of an athlete. And being that I've only played really at the basic college level, I can't even understand what these athletes go through on a much larger season, a much larger scale when their game isn't going right.
Yeah. And what's kind of interesting is from and looking at some of the expected goal impacts over at Hockey Viz, I think he's viewed as much more of an offensive defenseman. Right. Well, the offensive impacts have been really, really bad with Spence on the ice. The team is significantly worse from an expected goal standpoint with him on the ice versus when without. Conversely, though, it's been basically a wash defensively. So he's if there's one thing I'll say, like he doesn't seem to be as like I think he's getting beat. Like you saw yesterday, there was a situation where the stretch pass and Rantanen ends up getting behind him and he scores on the breakaway. I think that has happened maybe a couple of times where he's getting caught. Now, I don't know if part of that is communication with his partner or whatever. I don't know that a lot of the the defensive problems is necessarily in zone. But it's, I don't know. It's a little, it's alarming that we're seeing such a dip in terms of just what he could do with the puck kind of offensively. I know he's different than Clark. Like I don't view Jordan Spence as like this 100% like offensive juggernaut type of defenseman or anything like that, but certainly somebody that should be a little bit more of an impact offensively. And we're seeing that, he's down across the board. His shot attempts per game are down. His shot assists. So last year, Randon, he was over 9 shot assists per 60 last year, which was really good. Like he was right in line with Adrian Kempe. It was better than Laferriere. It was comfortably the best amongst defensemen. This year, though, it's been quite the opposite. He's down to he's under 5. He's got less shot assists per 60 than Trevor Lewis right now. It's just
yikes.
It has been a grind for Jordan Spence that I don't have a smoking gun. I can't pinpoint this right now, but it's just been a struggle.
Does Kyle Burrows need to get some consistent games and let him Spence sits a little bit?
I'm torn on this because I think there's value in. I can see value in taking a breather, watching the game from the press box, doing and kind of having that type of approach to it. I don't think it's anything that he needs like an extended break. If they decided, we're going to sit him down for a game and just kind of try to push the reset button a little bit and maybe see if there's something in his game that maybe we can help him as we're watching the game, from above. It's always easier watching from up there than it is from being down there. So if that happens, I know they did that early in the season, Jim Hiller did for a game. I don't think it could be argued right now if they decided to do that. I'm also, I'd like to see him right back in there though. Like I want to see him play himself through this and play himself out of this. Because the other thing is when you consider the struggles that he's had, I mean, this is what's kind of fascinating is the struggles that he's had coupled with the loss of Drew Doughty, you lose Matt Roy. This Kings as a defensive group in terms of like their defensive metrics and expected goals against have been outstanding. So they're weathering the storm of injury and a struggling Jordan Spence, but I just don't know how long that can last. They certainly are going to need him, especially as he's somebody that's manning the second power play. They're going to need him to improve.
Well, I think it might be good for him to take a seat on Saturday. You got 3 days off before the next game against Buffalo on Wednesday, so you're not only going to get a little bit of time off, but but you're going to get, those 3 days of practice before Buffalo, to where you get some more stuff on the ice. And, a lot of coaches say that, you don't learn a lot by playing the games. It's got to be instinct. All the stuff that you're learning and dissecting in your film is going to be at practice. And so that might be, something that is necessary. And just give them a little breather. Sometimes just a breather to get out of your head, because their last game was Wednesday, a week off of playing, in games, get out of your head a little bit, take a breather and come back against Buffalo, game's really that's a huge mental game. Any sport is, and so having that little break could do anybody. I tried to mute it and sneeze while you were talking, but it wouldn't come, and then it is what it is. Never, you're muted. Never cooperates with you.
Well, going back quickly to, what we're seeing in Brant Clark about how he looks so comfortable and he looks like he's playing with a confidence about him that he's not afraid to make a mistake. If he sees an opportunity to jump in the play and to be in the zone and to be down low behind the goal line, that's where he's going to go. And not to say that Jordan Spence would necessarily be doing that anyways, but it just doesn't seem that he's playing with the same type of freedom that he played with last year. And that's not to say that that's on the coaches. There's not to say that they're holding him back. It's just for some reason, there's something within him that's just not clicking right now. And, again, hopefully he's able to find that.
Well, I mean, somebody should hold me back from my betting when I get on DraftKings, because that's going to be our first sponsor there. Sometimes I go a little buck wild with my bets. But DraftKings is, where we like to go for betting here at Hockey Royalty. So the quest for the Stanley Cup is now. Puck dropping on the 24-25 season, already a couple of months in. Get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. It's super easy for first-timers to get started. Try betting on something simple, like picking a team to win, or going to DraftKings Sportsbook app now, select your team, and place your first bet. So I'm peeking here at some of the odds for tomorrow night's game. You look at the Golden Knights versus Utah, over under 6 goals there. If you want to get in on the high-scoring avalanche from the Kings, maybe they double up on the Capitals, over under 6.5. Colorado's favored by 1.5 goals. So odds are subject to change, so get them while they are hot. So if you're new to DraftKings, listen up. New customers can bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you just bet $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPENY, which is 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-78-97777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ice. Copyright NHL 2024, all rights reserved. Joe, I used DraftKings for the same day parlays the same day fantasy for like the $1 million thing. I thought I had a good lineup and just couldn't pull it in. Couldn't pull it through. First games were good. Last games got lost in. Made a couple bucks there, but wasn't able to get the big money. You're muted again there, Joe.
Did I do that again? What's going on here? Holy cow. Speaking of, I woke up the next day, what would have been this morning, because from the Colorado game, and the first thing I saw was a notification from a fantasy app, like Adrian Kempe had 2 goals. I'm like, ooh, all right, Kings must have picked one off in Colorado, and they didn't. When I opened up the score app, and I'm like, oh wait, those were the only 2 goals they scored, and they gave up 4. So I was excited for a split second, but.
My Uncle Jeff's in the chat. We'll excuse his choice of team there, but thank you for joining us, Jeff. He showed me. Have you seen the ice for the Tahoe, like the Tahoe Monsters or whatever that they're the? So it's a roulette wheel.
Come on,
like it's a roulette wheel where they take the face-offs in the offensive zones. It's pretty sweet. I'd have to say it's pretty sweet looking especially for I think they're ECHL. So
I did not know that, but that's awesome.
Yeah, I like it. So let's get into a little coast to coast before we get back in here with the Kings. So we're going to throw it over to the next segment of Coast to Coast with Hockey Royalty, talking about the rest of the NHL. Let's start it off with the wagon, absolute wagon, Winnipeg 15-1.
2. Go figure they lose tonight.
Oh, okay. Well, a wagon with the squeaky wheel. Get some WD-40. But that team is absolutely humming. And getting everything they need out of their goaltender. He who should not be named in Gabriel Velarde having a good season. Nikolai Ehlers is just one of my favorite players to watch live. He is so good at hockey. That team is just absolutely humming. We did the Kings for real last week. Do you think Winnipeg is for real? Could they get over the hump this year with how well they're playing?
I think they need one more piece up front. But when you've got a stud, you got an ace on the back end and Morrissey, you rattled off some impressive players and the always forgotten about Kyle Connor, who's just having yet another great season in Winnipeg. And obviously got one of the best goalies in the NHL in Connor Hellebuck. So, it was hard to see. I didn't know what they were going to do, what Winnipeg was going to do a couple of years ago. Obviously, they made the Dubois trade to the Kings, and they got some pieces back. Obviously, Gabe Velarde being the most significant one, and he's playing pretty well. But then, it was hard to see what the direction of the team was. I mean, I didn't know where they were. Were they a team that was kind of in this middle? They were going to be able to take a next step, or were they going to have to kind of retool a little bit? Because they had some big pieces. Wheeler was coming up, Scheifele, obviously Hellebuck, but then, they re-up Scheifele and Hellebuck to huge deals. And I think we were a little uncertain about what that meant. I mean, I'm not surprised to see them be still a relevant team in the short term. I didn't think they'd be this good though. But hey, when you've got a goalie like Hellebuck and you're getting contributions from some key pieces in that lineup, that's a really good team. And you're hard pressed to say they're not a cup contender.
He's an early contender for Vezina right now.
Yeah, he is. And I think they could use another piece, or maybe one defenseman, one middle six forward. But other than that, that's what a lot of teams are going to look for come deadline time if you're a contender. So that they're not alone there. But
are they the type of team to make a big move, or do you think they're just going to kind of?
I don't know offhand. I'd have to see their cap situation to see what, I guess, type of big move they could potentially make. But hey, you know what? Obviously, they're not going to play at this pace of 15-2 every 17 games, but this doesn't happen like every season. And so sometimes you got to see if it's clicking, take your shot, and I don't know what that shot is. But maybe kind of we'll tie in another team.
Sidney Crosby. I mean, the Penguins could be selling.
Well, I was just going to say, I'm going to tie in another team that we would talk about in Pittsburgh. And I'm not going to go Crosby, but do they have the
Malkin?
assets to, I was going to go a little bit of a different direction.
Okay.
Do they have the bullets in terms of assets to trade plus cap space to lure in a Marcus Pettersson? This is a free agent. He's a UFA. Pittsburgh can get a haul for him, and if you slot him in behind Josh Morrissey in that second, I mean, now that's a real deal type of ad, right? So, because I think Pittsburgh is a team, again, just kind of looping them in here to the coast to coast a little bit. It's a team that's probably going to sell off some pieces. Could we see an Anthony Beauvillier or Jesse Puljujarvi? Are these guys that, I don't know how much those guys are going to net, but those guys could be fine depth pieces for teams looking to fill out their roster. In addition to, somebody who I'm extremely high of on the back end and Marcus Pettersson. So yeah, I mean, there's pieces there, and if I'm Winnipeg, the way this season has gone, and you're banking all sorts of points, you're going to have yourself in a real nice position. Take your shot.
I think Malkin might be an interesting thing. Maybe not for them at the deadline, but at the deadline for the Penguins. He's only got this year and next year. He's 38. He's won cups, so he might just say, "Hey, I don't really care. Let's spend all my career in one location." But I think it'd be interesting because it's $6 million, right? So that the Penguins could eat some cap there and get a bigger pick. And he's got 13 points in 18 games. So that might be an interesting deadline name that might be getting tossed around here. If that's something that I think Malkin would have to ask for that, like, hey, I want to go win a cup.
Yeah. That's the thing with Malkin and with Crosby, and I guess to a lesser extent because Letang signed for a lot longer. Like I don't think these guys go anywhere unless they genuinely say, "Hey, if it helps you guys as an organization."
Well, Crosby just signed, but Malkin's
right.
on the last 2 years of his deal.
Yeah. Either way, I'll believe it when I see it, type of thing. Like I don't think it's a crazy shout by any means, but could Michael Bunting be again one of those kind of middle six playoff type players that a team could get? Like there's going to be some value there. I mean, we saw them trade Lars Eller to Washington. That's Washington kind of striking early, taking advantage of saying, you know what, we're off to a really good start here. Let's try to keep this thing going. So,
nobody thought Timo Meier was going to get traded. He was a face of the Sharks, right? So, I mean,
yeah, I mean there was some rumors there for a bit though, leading up to that. So, but yeah, I mean we'll see. Pittsburgh's an interesting team because they kind of have to do. I mean, it's probably going to be tough to do some sort of a total teardown when you've got. These aren't just, with Crosby, Malkin, Letang, and Carlson, and Rust is signed forever for over $5 million. So there's a lot of money tied up into some older players there. So I don't know. It's going to be really tough for them to do a bit of a teardown. So, but definitely some pieces there to consider if you're a team that is, a contender.
Speaking of pieces, rumor today that Adam Hirasek, prospect for Columbus Blue Jackets, my boy, is not happy with how he's being used, and not necessarily. He didn't ask for a trade, not looking for a trade, just rumors around the rumor mill, and we love the tinfoil hat rumors. Normally it's for the Kings, but my one and only article for Hockey Royalty was written about this guy. I love the way he plays. I love his game. He was my prospect before Brant Clark was my prospect. And I just really like everything he brings. And it's interesting that Columbus isn't really a playoff team. And I don't know why he's not getting more ice time. I haven't really watched a lot of Columbus games this year to know what's going on. But it just seems like a type of player that it's another team could take a whack at if he's out. If he wants out of Columbus, if the rumors are true that he is unhappy.
Yeah, I think there's a team in because there's two Euroseks now, David in Columbus and Adam. You're gonna have to help me where Adam went.
He just got drafted. I forget where, but
yeah, but David in Columbus.
Did I say Adam?
You said Adam, but I knew what you meant.
Okay,
David,
okay.
I know has been your guy for years.
Yeah,
but like somebody's probably going to get an intriguing young defenseman. Because for whatever reason, and I don't know, I haven't followed Columbus closely enough. I've seen the same kind of whispers that you have that there's just something's off there with Urasek. I'll say this, like watching Columbus when LA played them, like they were a lot tougher than I expected. They played a pretty structured game. They were good defensively. The Kings were not able to get in. They were not able to get into like a lot of the dirty areas against Columbus, if I recall. So I was impressed with how they played that game. They're a team that's, there's not a lot there talent wise right now. I mean, there is, it's just some of it's young, right? They're not a team that's ready to kind of contend by any means, but I'm surprised like you are that there's this type of rumblings around a player like Urasek, who's such a young, pretty promising player. This is surprising. And yeah, the Kings managed just 8 high danger chances at 5-on-5 or 6, high danger chances when they played Columbus, and that was among the lowest all season. So they played a pretty good. They were tough out.
Yeah, I'm looking at his stats this year. He's only played in 5 games, and every game he's only getting 12 minutes of ice time. He was a first-round pick, 6th overall in 2022, so still young to the league. And so I don't know if he's not earning the ice time. I don't know if it's a type of a Kings thing where they're kind of holding him back and kind of babying him. But those prospects, you got to get them in somewhere, whether it's in the AHL or it's up with the team. He should be playing. Like, he shouldn't be being healthy scratched. So I don't. And what I've seen, it's usage. So I don't know if David and his group believe that he should be getting more ice time, and it's not his play, and how that varies with the team. That remains to be seen. But a 6th overall pick being disgruntled after 2 years is not a good sign for Columbus. Hopefully, for their sake and their franchise, they can smooth it over. If not, Rob Blake should pick up the phone, because let's bring my boy home. Let's bring
that would be nice. That would be nice. Definitely not going to hold my breath on that one. And real quick, Rand, I want to check in player that we talked about. I know in the off season, I don't know if this was something that was talked about at the end of last
Jacob Chikrin. Oh, sorry. That's
everybody's got flashbacks, PTSD. No, Marty Natchez. Remember, his name was brought up. I wrote a piece on him as this is the exact type of player, right shot, top 6 winger that the Kings could. And there's a lot of teams. Don't get me wrong. Buffalo sorely could use a player like this too. Another team is looking for a top 6 scorer that they didn't get. Just checking in on him to see, how he's doing, because he did re-up in Carolina, and it's going pretty good. 5th in the NHL in points, Brandon. 9 goals, 16 assists, 25 points in 15 games. So what could have been Marty Natchez?
Absolute nuclear from him so far. Man, he just looks really good too. Like, I've watched a couple of condensed games for that team, and good for him. And putting, I think with the Olympics, I mean, the Czech Republic and the Slovakians and those types of teams, I know they won't be in the 4 nations, but they're gonna have a couple stars there. But man, what could have been an elite top scoring winger? But we got Joel Edmondson, so it all evens out.
And Tanner Jeannot, who leads. I just happened to see this. Did you know he led the league in penalty minutes
this year or every year?
This year, Tanner Jeannot leads the NHL in penalty minutes.
I am not surprised by that, because that's what we talked about coming into the season. It's like, you wonder why we're on the penalty kill so much. It's because you get penalties for hitting people in the back and doing inappropriate things. That's part of hockey, and it seems like they do that a lot. But he can fight, so it all evens out in the world of hockey, and so it all evens out here, and that'll do it for our installment of Coast to Coast with Hockey Royalty. And that segment was brought to you by our next sponsor, Raycon. I know that I get excited about a good deal. I look for deals with happy hours. I look deals online to get my hot sauces. I just got some hot sauces in. But Raycon is talking about a special Cyber Monday deal for their earbuds, which, I've been trying out lately, trying to get them in every single situation. Raycon, you can get an amazing deal on premium auto every single day of the year. And that doesn't mean they're not having sales for Cyber Monday, because why would they not? That's far from it. They're doubling down on their amazing value by offering viewers up to 30% site-wide. A Cyber Monday deal you can have every single day. That's Raycon's everyday earbuds, especially if you haven't checked out their new latest model. That includes plenty of new free features that make them even more must-have for the audio lover. For example, there's now 32-hour battery life, multi-point connectivity, which lets you pair with 2 devices at once. Raycon's everyday earbuds allows you to active noise cancellation. It's a feature that's a must-have for those long flights, or for me, and I like walking around Fort Worth. I like, getting out there, enjoying the nice weather. It's low 70s. You get out for a walk. But hey, you don't want to be bugged. You would put the earphones in, cancels out all the connectivity. Even when you're crossing the street or jaywalking, people can honk at you all they want. Can't even hear. But now that can be difficult to find at an accessible price point. People charge so much for this technology, not Raycon. because Raycon's quality rivals have some of the biggest names in premium auto. Raycon starts at just half the price as the other guys. So they're already an incredible deal. That's even before you factor in the Cyber Monday deal of up to 30% site-wide. Joe, site-wide 30%. Getting that discount. So I really like the Raycons. Good sound system. They're easy to use, easy to pair. They stick in my ear, which is nice because sometimes when you're doing physical activity, they can fall out. So overall, I've really enjoyed my new Raycon earbuds. Raycon Everyday earbuds are also available in a vibrant color. So, if you don't want to stick with the standard issue white or black, you can get out there and get some bright colors and personalize your look. Now is the perfect time to scoop up, even if you haven't already. And don't worry, if you're not impressed as I am with these Raycon earbuds, 30-day guarantee. So there's nothing to lose. It's time to save big on Cyber Monday. Go buy raycon.com/THPN today to get up to 30% off site-wide. That's right. You get up to 30% off everything for Raycon's website if you go to buyraycon.com/THPN. Joe, get yourself some earbuds, man. Drown out those kids of yours.
Well, I was going to say, because I have a frustration sometimes with earbuds with A, sometimes they don't stay in, and also B, when I'm cutting the grass, they need to be loud enough to where, and you said these are noise canceling, so that would be perfect for what I'm looking for.
Yeah, they have a couple different like the inner ear things to fit the canal, and then you don't just put it in your ear, you kind of put it in and then twist it a little bit. It kind of gets cradled in there. So I've enjoyed it, and it does have some good sound in there, decent bass. So I don't know if it'll overpower a lawnmower. I don't have any grass in my apartment, but Raycon, definitely quality sound. I've been impressed with it, and 30% off. Go get yourself a little early Christmas gift for yourself.
I like it.
Kings are in need of some early Christmas gifts, which is some more consistent play. But we're going to break down some stuff here. Joe wants to kind of break the defense down. I know they're changed from the 1-3-1, the 1-2-2. And a lot of people are like, okay, well, are they going to get more offense and give up some defense? Joe, why don't you break it down for us here? What have you seen stat-wise from the defensive core and the team as a whole 5-on-5?
The team as a whole 5-on-5 continues to be pretty good. You look at their expected goal share, their shot attempt share at 5-on-5, it's still among the best in league. And expected goals against in particular per 60 is top. So I was looking at Natural Stat Trick earlier today. They are top 3 in the NHL in expected goals against per 60. And like we talked about earlier, when you lose Drew Doughty, Matt Roy gets traded, Jordan Spence is having the start that he's having. You play regularly Joel Edmondson and more regularly than you would think Andreas Englund, and yet this team continues to be among the best in the NHL in terms of defensive metrics and expected goals against per 60 and however you want to look at it. Like, this is still a really, really strong defensive team, even without the stingy 1-3-1. So I don't think there's any concerns there from like a stylistic, the way they play the game, because I think so much of this has to do with their crop of forwards too. When you look at, obviously you've got Anze Kopitar, who's still one of the best two-way centers in the game. Philippe Deneau is not producing, maybe like we'd like to see, but he is still a strong two-way centerman. And actually, if you look at, for those that aren't familiar with Hockey Viz, it's an excellent website. They do a lot of good visuals with a lot of advanced statistics and things like that. And Philippe Deneau is incredible when he's on the ice with the Kings defensively. I mean, and frankly, his offensive metrics are not bad either, but defensively he is unbelievably outstanding. So I think a lot of this does have to do with the types of forwards that they have, with Kopitar, with Deneau. Kempe's turned into a pretty well-rounded player in his two-way game. Same thing with Quentin Byfield. Is more responsible defensively than than maybe some people think. So honestly, I think it's probably a bit of both, where it's not all the defensemen. I think they've got the right crop of forwards to help do it. And I think this, you know, it's not a team that is going to score a ton still. I mean, they're still missing some high end some finishers because again, I think they've got much more of like your 5-on-5, 200-foot type of players, both at center and down the wing. And sometimes if those are the types of players you have, it's not a bad thing, but you may sacrifice a little bit of offense along the way. And I think from a forward standpoint, you're probably looking at Kevin Fiala, and I think it was Kopitar that referred to Fiala as I think he used the term game breaker. Like, he's the game breaker. This is a few games back in a post game. And the Kings don't have a lot of those. And that's not to say he's not responsible or he cheats or anything. It's just he's one of the Kings forwards, one of the few Kings forwards that can genuinely create offense from nothing and for himself. And then, in turn for others. So I just think long-winded way to get back to the defensive metrics of saying, I think it's a holistic approach that they have. They're doing well enough as a group of defensemen, but they also have a group of forwards that's just very responsible group of forwards.
Yeah, I mean, you have a bunch of guys, and that's the type of players that they want. They always say, hey, we want a 200-foot player. I mean, the players that they draft, the players that they bring in, and there's a couple that's why we thought the Kevin Fiala trade was kind of weird, because it's not typically the player that they go out for and then, draft a Brant Clark. And I don't know if they thought, hey, Brant Clark fell to us, because I know in that draft, there was a couple pundits that thought he was the second or third best player in that draft, and it fell to him in the back half of the top 10. So maybe it was just value at that point for Brant Clark, but not typically the type of players that they bring in. They want to play a structured game. They want to beat you consistently 5-on-5 for 60 minutes. And as we've seen, the season has been kind of rocky back and forth. Offensively, the defense has been pretty good outside of a few games where they've gotten shellacked, and no team's going to be perfect, season long. But the type of players that they're trying and the type of game that they want them to play, even players like Brant Clark, well, hey, we don't want him to rover. We want him to play a more complete game, that type of stuff. And they've even taken Fiala and kind of like benched him for games mid-game if he's getting too wild, quote unquote, which you should always let Kev be Kev. But it's just kind of a weird thing. It's kind of it's a weird thing to think about is the players have outplay the system that they're in, and they're just the same type of players no matter where you deploy them on the ice. Yeah,
this is where we've all had. I think everybody is always going to have issues with any lineup that's ever put out. So there's no perfect lineup. Like every coach, any beat writer that tweets out, here's the lines and defense pairs, there's going to be somebody that has an issue with something. And we're guilty of it too. And I'm guilty of it. So Jim Hiller probably gets a lot of heat for a lot of that stuff. I know we've given him his share, but you have to give Jim Hiller a lot of credit here because, I reiterate, losing what they've lost in terms of their number one defenseman and some others, and to still be this good of a team at 5-on-5 is nothing to sneeze at. Like, this is again a team that's top 3 in expected goals against per 60, and they're top 10 in expected goals for per 60 per natural stat trick. So they're doing it at both ends of this, and at least in terms of like performance and the process, right? They're getting league average, maybe a little below league average goaltending, and they're never going to be a team that shoots that has a high shooting percentage. Actually, this year it's pretty good for relative to what we're used to seeing from the Kings. I think we're used to seeing them around the 8, a little over 8, and they're over 10% right now shooting percentage at 5-on-5. So, if they're able to maintain that, then you could be in business. I just don't know that they got the type of players to maintain that type of shooting percentage because they're getting a lot of goals from defensemen. But I also don't know that that's likely to continue. I mean, Edmonton's got a couple of goals. Englund has scored. Mikey Anderson's got shots from the point that have gone in. Gavrikov has had shots from the point that have gone in. None of these guys are these are barely 20-point defensemen. So the fact that they're scoring a bunch of goals early is nice, and I think it's helping the fact that they're not getting production from others. They're not getting production from Danault. Byfield is like kind of just he's like petering along right now, waiting for him to kind of pop and go on a run. So it's helped to kind of cover up some of those issues. I just don't know that I expect that part of it to continue, but there's no arguing that the 5-on-5 play for this team has been really, really strong.
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing, the power play hasn't been well.
Yep.
We're waiting for a couple. We thought Byfield would have a better start to the season, especially after the preseason.
Yep.
We have gotten an uptick from Clark and LaFerriere. So again, this isn't where I parked my car. We're like trying to figure we didn't bring in a scorer, and then we're not scoring goals, but we also lost some defensemen, but we're playing equal defensive hockey. It's kind of like it's just a puzzling thing of where the team put themselves, the situation the team put themselves in, and the kind of hockey. One is, hey, they didn't bring in a scorer, we're not scoring goals. The other one was, hey, they lost defensemen, but we're still playing defense. But they brought in guys that play 200-foot games in Danault, and they drafted Byfield and all that kind of stuff like that. They play a very responsible type of hockey.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I see there's John Miller is in with a couple of comments. Kings have played one of the easier schedules in the league. I honestly don't know. I genuinely don't know if that's true, Brandon. I don't know if there's a strength of schedule NHL site.
I'm looking at it right now, and they are 10th in strength of schedule in the league right now.
Okay,
so far, yeah,
not okay. And expected goal.
Not a bad. So I mean, they've had a tougher schedule so far.
Yeah. Okay. So, and he says expected goals is far from a perfect stat. That's very true. There is no.
Oh wait, no, they have a 10th remaining hardest schedule left.
Oh, 10th. Okay. So their schedule the rest of the way is fairly difficult.
Yeah.
And yeah, expected goals is not a perfect stat, and there isn't a perfect stat, frankly. But when you're trying to understand kind of a process and what is a team doing well, are they on the defensive side of things, are they at least limiting expected goals? And you're right, like there's a lot that can go into it, and different sites do different things, and the public sites have a little bit less in terms of some of the type of inputs that go into that. So totally acknowledging that, but it's pretty good. Like it's not perfect, but I would say that it's pretty good, and it's certainly better than a lot of other stats. So I do think that it's worthwhile to consider when trying to look at a process for a team. You certainly, and I think it kind of checks out. Like if you look at the standings of, let's see, some of the worst expected goals against teams in the league are the Anaheim Ducks, San Jose Sharks, Montreal Canadiens, and the Pittsburgh Penguins. So that kind of checks out. Those teams are bottom teams. When you look at expected goals for per 60, Carolina Hurricanes is number one. Washington's having a heck of a season. Pittsburgh can still pressure you. They just give them up at an alarming rate. And then you've got the Rangers and the Oilers. So like this is it isn't perfect, but like I think there's a lot that kind of checks out year over year, and a lot of the better teams tend to be pretty good at limiting expected goals against and getting a solid expected goal share.
So I don't know how this site. I'm getting this from PowerRankingsGuru.com, and I don't know how they configure their guru ranking, but they do have the Kings with the easiest schedule so far.
Okay, well, I don't know anything about Power Ranking Guru, so
yeah.
Thank you, John Miller. And again, and they're second in the Pacific. So like to that end, if they have played the easiest schedule, then they're kind of doing their job. They're second place in the division right now, right? I didn't think they'd be second place in the division at the end of the season. So I would say that then they're taking advantage of this easy schedule, quote unquote, and they're doing what they should be doing.
I think that people just think that they should probably be doing a little bit better if it's the easiest schedule. Maybe.
So I guess what I would say to that is, what were your expectations coming into the season? If you expected this team to be, win the division or a team that was going to make a deep playoff run, then if you've got a team with the easiest schedule, then you would probably expect them to be performing a little bit better, I guess, or having better results. But, I thought that this team was probably a wild card team. Maybe depending if things break right, maybe third in the division, but I think this is probably, a wild card team that's going to be in a battle. So if you figure that's what the case is, and they start the season, the first, what do we played 18, 19 games, with the second easiest schedule, or one of the easiest schedule, then okay. So they're second in the division, at 9-6-3. Like I don't know who's angry about that.
I mean, everybody's expectations are different.
Yeah, right. Agreed. I think I don't think you should be arguing with 9-6-3. And I guess so. John tweets, and I don't see a contender here. No. I don't think they shouldn't be. Then I don't think they should be considered a contender in terms of like a cup contender. I think this is a team that will get into the playoffs. I still think it's most likely as a wild card, and then you just see who do you draw, right? You play Colorado or Dallas or Edmonton. I don't think they get through right now. I said the same thing last week. I think they're a tier below the top teams in the West right now. And I think you can lump those in. I still think Dallas, Edmonton, Vancouver, Vegas, Colorado. I think they're behind all 5 of those teams. And it's hard to say to not mention Winnipeg there would be blasphemy. I have to mention Winnipeg there.
Yeah.
So to me, I still think they're behind those. That's now 6 teams. So again, and I think this is a wild card team, and that's okay. Like that was the expectation for, at least for me, coming into the season. So I think I sit here at 9-6-2. I'm feeling pretty good. Honestly, I like it. They're playing their results, and frankly, their performance. I didn't think this team would be this good still at 5-on-5. Right. I still think they're the way they play, their structure. I still figured they'd be a good 5-on-5 team, but they've been a great 5-on-5 team. So I'm encouraged by that, and I'm encouraged that they've been able to bank some points here in the early part of the season. So I think it's been largely positive.
I mean, I think the Twitterverse is pretty split. And you can see it in our chat right now. It's split of what people think this team is. So I think they're trying to figure it out. One of the moves last night was moving more up to the wing on the first line. First period was really great with that team, or with that line. Obviously, 2 goals by Kempe. So they're trying to figure it out. They're trying to see what this team has in. I think they expected more from Byfield, obviously, with his progression last year. I like that more. I like that they finally broke up Danault and Moore. And see what they could do there. Turcotte should be coming back here soon, whether it's Saturday or whether it's next week. I'm seeing pretty soon with him. He is skating. So is Kalia, but he is skating right now. So for the forwards, do you see Byfield going back up to wing? Do you think that Turcotte played well enough there on the first line? Did you like more on the first line, even though it kind of sputtered out the second part of the game? Kind of how do you view this forward group here?
I'm liking more right now on the first line. I think that's going okay. I don't know. I kind of expect Byfield to go back up to that line and then Turcotte slot in at 3C when that happens. But kind of what I'd like to see is I kind of like what you said, getting more away from Danault a little bit. Some of the like you just look at those 2 goals that were scored by the Kings last night. Like those were pretty passing plays, largely because of Trevor Moore. Mm-hmm. So I think getting more with more offensive creativity, I think is going to really help him. So I for some reason, we haven't seen a ton of Moore and Kopitar together over the years. I'd love to see it. I'd like to see them stick with this. I think that has a potential to be a pretty dynamic line. I would.
It's because I think this team, and especially Todd McClellan, it's like you get a thing that works, and then like, oh, we have to do that all the time.
Right.
It's like yeah, queso's great, but you can order another appetizer when you go to a restaurant.
Well,
like
I don't know. Queso is great, so you may want to stick with that. But to your point, like I actually wouldn't mind seeing Turcotte with Philip Deneau to see if he can kind of add a little bit more offensive spark maybe to that line. I say that, and I was about to pause because I was going to say that maybe I don't touch the Byfield line, but that Byfield, Fogle, and LaFerriere line got absolutely eaten alive against Colorado. Out attempted 12-1. Scoring chances were 7-0 in over 7 minutes and 20 seconds worth of 5-on-5 ice time. So I don't know if that's telling or what, but that is a poor performance from, your leading goal scorer and the player we've been waiting to kind of evolve into that big, legitimate franchise piece in Byfield. That was a tough showing. So I guess on the heels of that, would not be a surprise at all to see Byfield back up with Kopitar and Kempe.
Where's the balance of winning games versus getting him to develop into the center that they need?
I think they're more concerned about winning.
No, I know that. but we know that in order for this team to make it past the first round, Byfield needs to be an impact center on this team.
I tend to agree with that because, listen, they're not getting second line production from Philippe Deneau. Love his 200-foot game, but he's not producing right now. And love what Turcotte has brought. I don't think it's reasonable to expect that he's going to produce enough as, quote unquote, a second line center. So there's a pretty big hole there. So I agree. Like, I think they really, like if Byfield was playing and producing the way we saw him last year, and he could provide a legit 1-2 punch with Kopitar and Byfield on the middle and have Deneau settle in, the Kings I'd be much more optimistic, but we just haven't seen the same Quentin Byfield on a consistent enough basis right now. And I think what the Kings are going to do, though, is they're going to go with what they think is going to help win them games right now, and try to work it that way, get as many points, make sure they're in the best position possible, and then just see how the cards fall. Like right now, Byfield is, I don't know. I don't want to go too crazy with it, but it's hard to be kind of excited, like the way he's gone back and forth, center wing this season. Like I don't love that. I don't know if he does or cares, but I don't love it.
I mean, we talked about the Spence thing and having to play through difficult times. At some point, I think Byfield just has to play through it. But yeah. Will there be enough patience within the organization for that to happen? Because Turcotte's been playing well, but like you said, is he going to be trusted enough to lead a second line? I mean, they did put him on the first line. They trusted him enough to
as a winger,
as a winger. So, but speaking of centers, I just want to give stick taps to Kopitar leading the team in points again.
I mean,
what a feat!
We are going to miss this guy. So spoiled.
Yeah,
he's incredible.
One of the best to ever do it.
Just incredible. Best King in LA history. I don't even think that's like a
debate.
Yeah.
So
incredible. So I don't know, Brandon, just real quick, just to tie that up a little bit, I guess, because you asked me about more and would I keep them up there, and I'm trying to jot down like what lines I would go with, and it's hard not to just kind of stick with that Fogle, Byfield, LaFerriere grouping, give them another run at it, and but then what do you do with Deneau? Do you put Turcotte with Deneau and Akil Thomas? Like what is that line look like?
Is that like a pest line?
Right. So that's the thing. And you don't, and ideally maybe yes, Brandon, but when you're not getting the production from you need that Byfield line needs to be better.
Where's Fiala fitting now?
Oh, that's what I'm forgetting. Jeez. Fiala with Turcotte and Deneau. Maybe that's something that could be interesting. Or put LaFerriere up there with those guys. Or actually, how about this? Go with your theory there of this is more of like a pest line, energy line. Let's just call it a third line of Turcotte, Deneau, Warren Fogle, and then you've got Fiala with Byfield and LaFerriere.
There you go. You can do that. Speaking of fourth line, though, Hellenius, what a good start to his career so far. I thought he's played pretty well.
Yeah, and I guess I should caveat this with let's just throw that Colorado game out because nobody really. When
you get 0 shots on goal in the second period, it's easy to pretty much forget everything about that game.
Yeah, he was out attempted 11-2 and he was on the ice, but I'm not going to kill him for that because that nobody really
third game ever.
Very good. But I agree. Like, so the first game he played, thought he was a little clunky, but boy, I thought he really kind of settled in as it went along, and there's some things I'm seeing like, so I've yet to track the shot assists and the slot passes from the Colorado game, but I look at the Calgary game and Sammy Hellenius there with 7 shot contributions, Andre Lee with 5, but it was the Columbus game. Hellenius was pretty impressive. So like, I don't know. I think there's I'm comfortable keeping this going a little bit just to see how it goes. Like, I'm not going to go too crazy right now with Hellenius and or Lee for that matter, but I've liked them enough from what I'm seeing to like just keep trotting them out there a bit, right? Just see what we get.
Yeah, when we get Turcotte back, it'll be interesting to see who they send down.
I'm assuming it's going to be Hellenius. He just got. I would think that'll be him, but we'll see.
Yeah, and then Al coming here, so keep Jeannot out. I mean, they paid him money. They're not. We know they're not going to.
Well, I mean, they traded an asset for him. So, yeah, listen. If you're looking for, I don't think Jeannot's been very good this year. I'll give him a little bit of if you're looking for a silver lining. If you're looking for something,
he is leading in something.
He is leading. He's leading in penalty minutes, but he is also he's when he's in the offensive zone, and maybe this is a he had the big year a few years ago when he scored a bunch of goals. So maybe everybody thought of this guy as like a goal scorer or a shooter and all stuff like that. And that's not what I'm seeing so far, at least in some of the tracking that I'm doing. Like he's not bad, and he's like above average in terms of his shot assists per 60. And he's got, I have him with 4 slot passes on the season, which considering, his role, I don't think it's that bad. Like it's double what Trevor Lewis has. It's more than Alex Turcotte. So there's like, again, I'm grasping a little bit here because I just don't think he's been very good. So if they decide to keep him out, Al, they ain't going to see me losing sleep over it.
David coming in here. What about little Clarkey with Anderson? Do you think they've been given a lot of minutes. Do you think they give him the top pairing?
They had this preconceived notion that Brandt Clark can only play with Joel Edmondson. So unfortunately for Brandt Clark, that's who he's going to have. Maybe from time to time, David, will see a 44-92 pairing, but I think for the large part, we're going to see a heavy dose of Clark and Edmondson, which, credit where it's due, they were the only 2 Kings in the positive by a wide margin, by the way, in shot attempts, and I believe expected goals as well. At least Clark was really good expected goals share. Edmondson was not, but they both led in the shot attempt share against Colorado. So
one of the last topics here, 32 thoughts with Elliot Friedman, said the Kings are very interested in extending Gavrikov. Gavrikov is having one of his better seasons. So what does that mean for him and this organization? What kind of money do you think that might be with how he's playing so far this year? Is that the right move for a team like LA, or is that just the LA move?
I mean, listen, it'd be very difficult for me if I'm being honest. I mean, obviously, not knowing what the term or obviously what the deal is, of course, like there's, you know, it's hard to say too much, but I like before the season, I would have said I'm a firm no on this idea, but he's played very well. I have to give credit where it's due. He's played very well. I still would prefer not. I don't know how defensemen of his style age as they get to the other side of 30, which he's approaching. So I would be very cautious with this deal. You know, I think if they didn't have Joel Edmondson, I'd be more comfortable and more open to this idea. But you're just you're locking in, you know, Anderson, Gavrikov, Edmondson on the left, and
for
I still
3+ seasons.
Yeah, and I just still think there's it. I really think it limits you there. I still think you. I still think they need a little bit more of a dynamic player there, not just a solely offensive defenseman. Is not what I'm getting at, but I think they need a little bit more of a dynamic player. And as your LD2, I still think that is a thing that they need. Now, again, Gavrikov has done an excellent job this season. He's played extremely well. He's been incredible defensively. And, you know, if they didn't have Mikey Anderson, then maybe I'm more open to keeping it.
Mhm.
But I already you're just locking yourselves into defensive defenseman. And I don't subscribe to the adage of, well, let's just pair a defensive defenseman with an offensive defenseman or a puck moving defenseman, whatever phrase you want to use. And I don't subscribe to that. I think you should be able to have pairs that can do a little bit of everything. So I'm torn on this, Brandon, because as somebody who wasn't the biggest Gavrikov fan when they acquired him, I've done almost a 180 here, and I've been very impressed with his season. It's really good to see. He's been a big part of the reasons to why they're having such a successful season defensively. But to me, this team continues to be limited by its I don't want to say lack of offense. It's hard to say lack of offense from the blue line this season because they've gotten a lot of offense from the blue line in terms of goals, but I don't think that's sustainable. I want more, frankly, and this may sound weird, like if the Kings defense group was leading like from an assist standpoint, I actually think that's a little bit more predictive, a little bit more play driving, if you will, or creating plays where a shot from the point that is a seeing eye shot that goes in, that's not like you can't bank on that. That's not repeatable. That's not I guess it technically is, but it's a low percentage shot in and of itself. So the fact that the Kings have a lot of goals from defensemen is certainly a good thing. I just don't know that you would like expect it to continue based on that. So I think he stays just because I think the Kings love him, and I think he's exactly what they want from a left defenseman. I'm just going to hold my breath on the term.
John's coming in here saying, hey, we don't really have much LD in the pipeline. I don't really know if that's a pipeline issue. I just think that, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Joe. I mean, I believe that they can find similar production for cheaper than what Gavrikov will end up getting, which, well, I think it'll be, I mean, he took a shorter deal than I thought last time, but I think now if he's having the best season that he's had, he's been shown at a higher level because he's playing a lot of first line minutes. I think he could easily see, what do you think, 6.5, if not more?
Yeah. And so so he's at 5.875 right now. And having an excellent season. I'm gonna go back to this guy, Randon. Marcus Pettersson is a free agent at the end of the year. And right now he makes just over 4. Marcus Pettersson is a better defenseman than Vladislav Gavrikov. And so, like, not that you can put your eggs in one basket, but man, if I had a chance to I would sign Marcus Pettersson before I sign Vladislav Gavrikov. Now, I don't think the Kings would, because stylistically, I just don't think they see that. But I would say Gavrikov, he's 28. He'll be 29, I think, when the deal kicks in. If it's more than, I just don't want to do I don't want to do like a 5-year deal, 5 times 6, 6.5. I think that's too much. I don't know. I don't know what he gets, but I worry that it'll be a lot.
You know what's not a lot, Joe? When you buy your tickets with Game Time. So our sponsor here at Game Time, I love the excitement before games. I love walking. Here in Dallas, when you go to a Dallas Stars game, when I go to see the Kings play, you get off the train, you walk up towards the excitement of watching your team play. All that can be made easier to get into the game with Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets easy to see your favorite teams play live even easier. It filters out all the fluff to show you incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. So I'm looking here for the game here against the Red Wings. I'm peeking through. I'm seeing some upper deck tickets for $67. You can watch where the Kings shoot twice for a little over 150 for that game. Or hey, Game Time saying, hey, there's a super deal in the mid row where you can get a top 1% value at 188 for the tickets going around there. So Game Time is perfect place to buy your tickets. So there's different things you can do. You can find super deals. You can find seat views before you can buy. You get the lowest price guarantee to cancellation. So there's a bunch of cool little features that they do that allows you to ensure that you're getting the best deal you can on Game Time. So either you customize your app by curation. It makes even that you can save more on sports, concert, comedy, theater, etc. It's all in pricing, so you don't have to worry about those pesky fees at the end. You know what you're getting as soon as you click on the ticket. Seat views, panoramic views of the seat right before you buy. You get the lowest price guarantee for up to 100% of the difference. With Game Time will credit you. Also, Game Time's coverage for customer service is one of the most flexible in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download Game Time app now. Create an account. Use code THPN for 20% off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's THPN. Get to 20% off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Ooh, Game Time. So looking forward, next couple games, some winnable games. They're playing Buffalo. They're playing Detroit. It's a good time to answer for this team to answer and get on the right side and get some points here. So I think it's going to be maybe a statement game on Saturday after getting a shellacking. The Kings have really played well after embarrassing losses. So it'd be interesting to see how well they play against Detroit on Saturday.
Very much expecting that Detroit game to be a game that they win. And I will say, I don't think we've mentioned Darcy Kemper did leave the game early against Colorado. I don't believe that there's been an update that has been announced today. So we'll see what happens. I guess it's conceivable to expect Big Save Dave to be back in on Saturday. I presume we would see Phoenix Copley up as well if Kemper is going to miss any time. So we'll see what goes on there. But yeah, I agree. This has got to be a game that the Kings should beat Detroit. Detroit's not a very good hockey team. That's a game that the Kings I expect to win. And I want to give just a along the note, Randon, but maybe just kind of quickly going back to the Colorado post game, anyways. Jim Hiller, and again, we've this is why I think we're pretty fair, Randon. I think we're right down the middle.
Mm-hmm.
We give praise when we feel it's time to give praise, and I feel that we're not afraid to criticize a coach or play or whatever when we feel it's right to criticize. So, we've had our issues with some of the lineups and stuff that Jim Miller has done, but as I was alluding to earlier on this show, I think you have to give him his kudos. He's done an excellent job with this team, getting them to play as good as they have at 5-on-5, and it's led them to a second place in the Pacific Division right now. And I want to go back to something that he said, because I sense that this is how he I don't know. And maybe this is just me. Like I get a little nerdy about. I've always watched coach post game stuff since I was a kid. It's a little weird, I guess, but I always love coach and GM stuff. But I like. There was a question. I believe it was Zach Dooley after the Colorado game. Because he was asking, kind of what happened. The second period, like the Rantanen line. Did you give or the McKinnon line? Did you give them too much respect? And Hiller kind of paused and he said, those guys have earned respect. So I don't think it was that we gave them too much respect. We just didn't play them hard enough. And to me, I kind of like that. And to me, that's like in my head as a coach, I'm looking at that and I'm saying, that's him. Because I think sometimes when you say, well, we showed them too much respect, it's a little bit of a cop out. Like these are great players. These are some of the best players in the world. You should show them respect. They've, as Hiller said, they've earned that. But that doesn't mean you roll over to them. You should play them tough. I just liked how we approached that because I think it's easy to just say that, we gave him too much respect and it's just kind of rah stuff. I liked how he said that, but he at the same time held his guys accountable and says we need to play them tougher. We need to play them better. I thought we did a good job in the first and we got away from him in the second. It's a little thing. And
but
I don't want to
it's not like we're the Ducks. It's not like we're the Ducks or the Sharks, like, where it's expected. We have Hall of Famers on our side.
Made playoffs 3 years in a row. Like it's not, necessarily something you should necessarily write home about, but like, to your point, we're not a bottom feeder team here to where you just lay over for the almighty Colorado Avalanche. So you're here, you're in the NHL, you're expected to go out and try to win this game.
And yet we got embarrassed in the second period, and they took it. I mean,
and credit, hey, the great players they're great players for a reason, and Colorado's only going to get better, by the way, because they're getting some horses back here soon. So I don't know. I just want to throw that out because as in my, like I said, I watched, coach post games, and there's something about that when I was curious to see how he was going to answer that question. And I don't know why I get irrationally bothered by coaches that say we showed them too much respect. And I just like that he acknowledged, they've earned the respect. Those are great players, but we need to play them tougher. And I don't know. I just like the answer.
McKinnon for Hart this year, right?
I mean, he's a stud.
Yeah.
He's a freak. Oh, speaking of, not that I don't want to end it necessarily on this, Randon, so maybe spin it back real quick and do one of your, give us a positive, but Connor McDavid did get his 1,000th point today. So
what? Why?
Stick tap.
We had coast to coast. You could have threw it in right in the middle.
He didn't wait. He hadn't gotten it yet.
Oh.
I tried.
Just waited. Oh man. Well, hopefully we have a positive on Saturday. Get this team back on track.
Yes.
Speaking of positive, thank you for all of our fans that came in tonight. The chat was buzzing pretty well. Appreciate that. You can find all of our articles at hockeyroyalty.com. Kyle's pumping out some prospects, man.
Yeah, seriously.
Prospect articles.
Kyle Garcia, go follow Kyle. He's doing a great job with the prospect stuff.
For all of you on our chat that thinks this season is over and we should rebuild, well, then follow Kyle because he's got all of our prospects that are coming up there. All of our Twitter handles are scrolling across the bottom, which is hockey_royalty, at Rando Commando 24, at NHL Russell, at JW Paterino. I think this team you got to get it back on track. Got a statement game Saturday. We'll see how that works out. So, going to be positive with that. And as always on this podcast, go Kings, go.